All right, hello everyone. This is Warrior Woman 91, and you're listening to You Got It. All right, so we're coming up with another episode. This is episode 10 of this new show of mine. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to the first 9 episodes, and for listening to this 10th episode. It is a new show. It's a little bit different than what I've done in the past, of course. I know you guys all missed the video interviews, and hopefully those will be coming up soon, possibly even the next episode, but it depends on what my upcoming guests are comfortable with. But I have brought back Theresa because the episode that she was on 2 weeks ago was actually pretty positively received. She was actually able to break a view goal that I have had.
It's all due to my star power.
Yeah, your star power and all of that. Actually, I think it had more to do with the content and the long-form discussion of Endgame. But, yes, Theresa's star power is back. We have Poppy sitting in the background on laying across a desk, and my other cat, Ace, whose nickname is Bunny Bunny. Yeah, that's a little bit of an Easter egg for all of you. Yeah,
no pun intended.
She has like little rabbit feet, and that's kind of where the name came from. But anyway, completely off topic. Today we're going to be talking about movies again, and particularly, well, we're going to start off with a movie that I've now seen twice, and I've watched the ending probably 14 times at this point, because it's just such a killer ending, no pun intended. But we're talking about Psycho,
which is one of my favorite movies of all time.
It's a pretty stellar performance. I wouldn't say it's man.
From who, Kelly?
From
Anthony Perkins.
Anthony Perkins.
Give credit where credit is due.
Yes, Anthony Perkins plays the Psycho. Now, I'm going to, just for everybody's information, I'm going to spoil everything. And so if you don't want to hear spoilers and you haven't seen the movie Psycho from 1960, go and watch it and then come back and watch the episode. Or listen to the episode, because we're still on audio, and I'm just not used to being an audio-only show, even after 10 episodes. But, so, Psycho, Reese, why don't you tell the audience what Psycho is about without revealing the ending?
So, Psycho is based off of a book, which is based off of a real-life event, loosely based. The author of the book changed things as he saw fit to fit his fantasy narrative. But it's about a woman who wants to get married to this guy, and so she steals some money very arbitrarily to try to do this because she's dissatisfied with her life. And she gets off track from the highway that she's traveling on to see her boyfriend. And she runs into this motel, and it's the middle of the night, and it's called the Bates Motel, and she goes in there, and there's just one guy, and he wants to have dinner with her and wants to talk about what she's doing, and as they get to talking, he reveals he has a sick mother living in his house, and that he can't really leave because he has to take care of her, and that she's just kind of mad. But when the woman suggests that he should shut the mother away, he gets really upset with her, and so she decides to end with the conversation, and the conversation makes her decide that she kind of went mad herself, and that she should be going back and giving the money she stole back. And then she is killed in a very famous shower scene, because she takes a shower next, by this womanly figure that comes into the shower and stabs her to death. And so spoilers. Everyone knows this, though. Everyone knows this. The girl is stabbed, and so I'm not done. And so, but the money that she stole remains at the motel, and so people keep coming to this motel and disturbing this man and his mother, to try to find the money, and they don't seem to realize the bigger story that's going on here.
Yes, that's basically the gist of the story. So what I really want to focus on is there's 3 very famous, we'll call them terror scenes.
I think they're called jump scares, Kelly.
Jump scares? Okay, whatever. I call them terror scenes because they're meant to induce terror, I guess. But anyway, so Theresa already referenced the first scene. We'll call them what? Jump scares?
I think it's scary scene. Jump scares when you don't expect it coming, and then...
Well, most people, I don't think, expected her to get stabbed in the shower, but...
Okay.
So that scene, of course, starting out, that's the first jump scare scene or whatever.
And it's the most famous.
It is the most famous. It's one of the most famous scenes, and I think it's mostly famous because of the music.
Yes, because the music has the shrill violin screech is played on parodies. It's done in other horror movies. It's done everywhere. I knew it from cartoons and basically everything I watched for years, and I never knew it came from this movie, and I was shocked to find out that it actually came somewhere. So the shower scene is pretty much what everyone remembers from the movie because at that time nothing like that had been done. We wouldn't see a character nearly naked. They actually don't show any of her essential parts. We wouldn't see someone walk in on someone naked. We wouldn't see someone stab someone to death with blood, or at least fake blood spraying out, or whatever, as best as they could do. And it's actually a really mild scene by our standards, but back then nothing like that was ever seen. And because people didn't even know it was coming, it just absolutely horrified them. And so that's why it's kind of lived in infamy, kind of like a lot of things from Citizen Kane have lived in infamy, even though we look back on it today and we wonder, well, why was that so revolutionary?
Yeah, so I guess I just want to weigh in here because, first of all, I'm trying to pull up the music so that the audience can hear the actual famous soundtrack that we're speaking of right now. But I think this...
if I can interrupt, I know the exact place to get it.
Don't interrupt. So what I just wanted to reference was, first of all, I do think that scene it's well done. Of course, back in the day, they weren't able to do certain kinds of graphics or even the amount of violence was still limited of what they could show. So it's not the actual, what you're seeing, I don't think is as scary, but it really is the music that sells it, and I am trying to pull up the sound. I've got the scene going. Let's see. There's the... So I don't... Well, let me... Hang on. I don't know how much of that the audience could hear, but again, watching the scene, it's not that scary. I mean, it's scary, but it's not because it's old. But that music is what sells it, because that music feels like a knife stab.
Yeah, and that was the point of that music. And my favorite quote from a fan of the movie was, the music was scarier than the movie itself.
I think that's correct. I think that movie probably would have been a joke. I think that without that music and without the tone that was set for it, it probably would have gone down in history as a sad attempt at a horror. But
I don't think so. Not with the context of the time.
No, I just think that the music is really what sells that movie above all else, because that shower scene is not scary without the music. I don't think.
Not to us, Kelly, but I'm just saying back then they never saw anything
Perhaps back
like
then, but you can't, like, now...
Now everyone would laugh at it.
Now, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I know,
it would not be the long-standing classic without that music.
Yes, the music was what made it.
So let's move on to the second of the, what do we call it again?
Jump scares.
Jump scares. The part when the guy walks up the stairs and the mother comes out of her bedroom with a knife. Now, that's another scene where it wouldn't be scary necessarily, except for they set it up properly and they had good music. So the way the camera angle is in that scene, and you guys can go and watch all of these scenes on YouTube. You can just type in Psycho. If you need help spelling it, we can spell it for you at the end. In fact, I might put that... I mean, you can go look at the title of this episode if you need help spelling Psycho. But it starts with a P.
Oh, it starts with an S, Kelly.
No,
you missed that. I'm just joking.
So you upset me. So the scene is set up. This guy is walking up this Victorian set of stairs, and inside this Victorian house, and he's walking up the stairs, and the way the camera angles, it starts out behind him, and then it comes up in front of him, and then it moves backwards. so that it's overhead.
Wait a minute, there's an important shot before this. The door to whoever is coming out to get this guy opens, and you see it open. So the interesting thing about this scene is you know it's going to happen.
Yeah, you know somebody is waiting to jump out that door, but the way the camera angle shifts from the front of the guy's face then to up
to an overhead position.
To overhead, so you can see out of the corner of your eye, you can see the cracked open door where somebody is waiting to come out. And then you can also see the guy coming up the stairs. So that is what actually makes you jump at that scene, is because you can see the person where the person is about to come out of the corner of your eye, but you're focused on the guy coming up the stairs. Would you disagree with that statement?
No, except for the door is completely open at that point. And can I add some things about how it's shot?
Important.
I know. What I mean is everything is set up in this scene. He's coming, the door is open, and all of a sudden, out comes Mother. But what makes it so scary, makes it jump, is two things. One, the music again starts playing and thrashing the audience. This is the knife coming, and that's what the music announces. And also, Mother has a knife here, and she's very methodically. Is that how you pronounce it? A very methodical way, just marches up to the guy. She doesn't run. She doesn't pounce him. She doesn't tiptoe. She just walks right out in a brisk walk and stabs him like this is a routine. And so that's another thing that I find rather scary about the scene.
Yeah, so the combination of the camera angle in that scene and also the music, because again, looking at it now and the kind of technology that they had and the limited amount of violence they could show, it looks kind of silly. Like, the actual stabbing scenes in this movie are kind of silly looking. But they're still scary because great use of camera angles, great use of music, and that's what makes this movie a classic.
Well, yeah, but the thing about the scene is, I don't know anyone who has watched that scene where Mother comes out of the door and hasn't jumped. Even if they're not scared afterwards, they just jump because it's so surprising. Yeah. That scene is...
There is something about that corner of the eye, because your eye is not focused on that area.
Yeah, because there's movement on the other side of it.
Yeah.
But, so that scene, that is a brilliantly shot scene at that beginning part. But what happens and kind of kills it for the modern audience, which is what Kelly was getting at, was afterwards, the stab happens, but it's just a botched editing job there because Mother stabs for the stomach, and then...
No, I thought, didn't it come down in the chest?
Came down in the chest, yes.
But then it cuts to the head being stabbed.
Yeah, and if you look closely, if you go on YouTube and just watch closely, basically you cut to a frame of his face in shock, and then the red appears, and so it's and then he basically moonwalks down the stairs, and everyone because it's, just read the comments section, people are like, oh, I jumped at that part, but then I laughed at this part, because it's a great scene at the beginning, but then it kind of goes downhill because of that editing, and I'm not sure how they would have filmed that scene otherwise without doing the weird moonwalk face shot of him, because they didn't want to reveal the killer at that point, the face of the killer, so... But I think that just having to cut away from the knife stabs is, because they still couldn't show that amount of violence, is kind of what messed it up.
I didn't even think of that the reason why they shot things in certain ways was because they didn't want to reveal the face of the killer, because even in the shower scene you can kind of see the face, but you can't really because there's the shower curtain in the way.
Yeah.
Does he even pull the shower curtain back?
He does, and you only see a darkened face. You can kind of see the eyes, but if people have tried to look at it and see, like, oh, can I see him? But that's kind of...
Then they have a stand-in. Yeah, so it's not even the same guy. Oh,
girl. Yeah. You misgendered her.
Excuse me. Sorry. So now we come to the final scene, and again, if you guys haven't seen the movie, I'm about to just ruin the whole thing for you, because I really enjoyed the movie having not known anything about it. I knew zero things other than the famous shower scene was in it, but that famous music. But I knew zero things about this movie, and I was completely fooled all the way up until the end, and even partially past the end, because I was really tired. So the final scene, the sister of the girl who was murdered finds a way to get into the house where the mother lives, and her son had kept saying he did not want anybody to go in there. He did not want anybody to talk to her. He did not want anybody bothering her. He did not want anybody going into that house. And so the sister uses her sister's ex-boyfriend as a distraction for the guy, and then she goes into the house because she wants to talk to this mother. And as we know, mother is the one who's been stabbing everybody. And so we're all scared when she goes into this house because we're sure that mother is going to stab her. And she's going through mother's bedroom, and she's going through her son's bedroom, and she's going into all these rooms. And finally, she sees the son running up the stairs, and she thinks, oh my gosh, he's going to catch me, and I'm not going to be able to find his mother. And then she happens to hide in the staircase of the cellar and realizes that that's the one room she hasn't been in yet, other than the kitchen. She never went.
She didn't, but she saw it was a secret room, and she thought I better check this out. Or actually, my interpretation when I first watched is she's just seeing if there's another way out. But I don't think that's it. I think she just saw, oh, I haven't checked here. She could have checked the kitchen when we weren't seeing.
No, she didn't check the kitchen. Shame on her. I would have wanted to see what they were eating. But anyway, so she goes downstairs and she finds Mother, who happens to be a skeleton sitting in a rocking chair. And that, of course, terrifies her, and she screams her head off, thus notifying the son that she is in the cellar, and he comes running in, dressed up as Mother. Because he's actually the mother the whole time. He's the one doing all the stabbings. And that is by far the scariest scene to me in the entire movie. Even though I've watched it 100 times, it's still...
To try to get over her fear.
Yes, I was so disturbed by that scene. The first time I saw it, I did not want to take a shower, and I immediately went and took a shower anyway. And I did not want to go to sleep, and I did that anyway.
Well, it's terrifying, and as I rewatch the movie, I find it very interesting that obviously now we're dealing with a split personality the guy has, and the psychiatrist at the end who assesses it says that he was never fully Norman, but sometimes he was only Mother. But you see during the movie that his mother has this smile, his mother persona has this smile thing going on. You see it when the detective leaves in the middle of the movie, and all of a sudden he starts snickering to himself in this very weird fashion. So in this end scene, when he runs in dressed as his mother to kill this girl, he has this look of absolute joy and enrapturement that he is going to stab and kill this person, and that he has discovered them, and like his elbows are together up in the air with a knife, and his tongue is at the roof of his mouth, and he's got a face on that we have not seen throughout the entire movie.
This is the happiest we've ever seen this character, and that, I think, is the scariest part of that scene. It's not necessarily the surprise and the coming up behind, and you can hear the footsteps, clambering down the stairs as fast as you can. It's that big old smile. That's the thing that creeped me out the most about that scene. And that really was the scariest scene of the movie.
Yeah, and it terrified me when I first saw it, and I was watching the movie in the dark, and then my mom came up and started asking me questions, and that scared me even more because I just see her face in the dark. And it scared, when I watched it a third time, the second time it scared me just as much, but I watched it a third time with my brother, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to be scared. I know what's coming. It's not scary. He's not scared of this. I'm not going to be scared of this. So I sit there. Skeleton jump scare happens. I'm not scared. I hear the clamoring, and I'm like, not scared. He comes in with that smile, and I felt the red and the heat come out of my face. And so, yeah. And I get upset because in the comment section under that video on YouTube, the top one, there are people who are saying that they thought it was funny. And I'm like, it's not funny. You're crazy. It's not funny at all. My fear needs to be validated. But other people say that it is the scariest thing in the entire movie, and they can't understand why anyone would think otherwise. So,
well, anyway, so those are the 3 jump scare moments in that movie, and the third one I still think is the scariest moment of all. Again, for all of those reasons, but. If you disagree with me, please comment in the comment sections.
And give a detailed psychological, objective reasoning as to why, because I'd like to hear it, because I think that scene is absolutely terrifying.
Alright, so I'm calling this episode Psycho and Cinderella for a reason, and the reason is we're going to jump right into some Disney movies to discuss. without really any segue. So here we go. So one thing that I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to rewatch all of the Disney movies in the order that they came out. And by Disney movies, I mostly mean Disney animated. So I watched Snow White, and it is still the masterpiece that it always has been. Let's see. I have a list here. Yeah. So Snow White is definitely. It still holds up after all these years. It was the very first Disney animated film ever, and I think it's still one of the highest quality films they ever did because they really took a long time on it. The artistry is really well done, the illustration is beautiful, and the story is actually, I think, really simple, and I think that that's helpful for that movie that they kept it as simple as they did because there's not a whole lot that goes on. Do you have any disagreements with my evaluation?
No, Snow White is actually possibly my favorite Disney movie of all time because of actually all the reasons you said. Because it has held up for so long, ever since the 1930s. The only thing I think that doesn't hold up as well is the audio quality, but as time has passed, they've been able to upgrade that and update that and fix it. But one of my frustrations with modern animation is it's either very, very, very lazy, and I've seen this with Disney with their new animated shows. It's just getting lazier and cheaper despite all the money they have. Or it's really CGI heavy, and it's basically just, well, look, we have money, we have computers, and they just use their computers, and, like, people were going crazy over the Frozen trailer in the beginning, like, look at that water, it looks real, and I'm like, that's not art, that's money. That's just Disney saying, we have money, guys, we have lots of money. But Snow White, first of all, animated movies back then, ones that they were really putting effort in, they would do entire painted backgrounds, just these exquisite paintings. You can watch videos of them going step by step with the artwork, and then they would do it's called cell animation. They would take the models of the characters and put it over that, which, by the way, animation, just drawing it and having to do every single frame like that is a ton of effort. It is. Don't laugh.
That was close.
Anyway, it's so much effort, and not that animating on a computer isn't effort, but to be able to do everything by your hands rather than just programming and setting things up, that's just it's just so impressive to just keep watching the movie. And the fact that they put that effort into it with the artwork is why it holds up so well.
So, moving on to the next movie, we're only going to go through, I think, 6 or 7 of these movies because I haven't gotten very far in this marathon, but Pinocchio was the second Disney animated film they ever made, and I also think that the artwork on that movie is really well done, and I think the story quality is a little bit more complicated than Snow White, and I think they were probably ready for it at the time, but there is a little bit more of a jumbled feel to Pinocchio as opposed to Snow White. That's not to say that it's a bad movie. That's just to say that I have an animal that's hanging from the curtains right now. Pop, get down. Bad. So, back to that. Pinocchio, I think... it's hard to explain Pinocchio because it's got a really good message at the end. He has to learn his lesson. It's got really good, it's just,
Pinocchio is set up in a more episodic way where he gets into different situations that test his morality, because morality is kind of, and what makes a boy and a man is what Pinocchio is all about. There's a lot more, the reason why...
I just to jump back in here, I think the episodic comment is the one that I was looking for because it does feel like it's different sections. It's not one movie necessarily. It's almost like it's a TV show, but it's a movie.
And it's a bit, if the reason I think Snow White works so well at the time is because it is such a simple story. It's the kind of story in a fairy tale everyone knows. It's the, this is going to sound cheesy. Boy meets girl, they get separated, but true love prevails. It's so simple, and it's what everyone knows, and it's what everyone can connect to. Pinocchio, I don't think, is a lesser film, but it's not nearly as simple And so that's why I think Snow White might be superior to people. Also, Pinocchio has these different settings. At first, it's like in centuries old German town. Oh, no, it should be an Italian town, right?
Yeah, it's Italian.
Yeah, Italian. And
Theresa, your last name.
I know. And then we switch to Pinocchio going to the circus, and then he kind of goes on an arc there, and it ends. And then he goes on another arc to Pleasure Island, and this is being led on by a fox and an anthropomorphic fox and cat all of a sudden. So, and then after that, there's an arc there, and then he goes on another arc to save his father. And it is a progression, but it's a bit more of a complex story. So, and there's nothing wrong with that, but Snow White is such a universal thing, that's why it's a bit higher up there.
Yeah, so now we're just going to need to continue trucking through these movies. So Dumbo, and I've obviously taken some movies out of this list. This is just the list of movies that I intend to watch on this marathon. But so Dumbo comes next in the order, and people complain about Dumbo because of the racial connotations, because there are a group of crows. There's a group of crows,
Black crows
that the leader of the crows, his name is Jim.
They don't say that in the movie.
They don't actually say that in the movie, but I guess in the
production notes,
his name was Jim. So that's of course that's a problem. But here's the thing. Again, it doesn't say, they don't actually say his name is Jim in the movie, so I don't think it's a real problem to show children that. I watched it as a kid.
It went right over my head when I was younger. I didn't even know they were supposed to be black.
I didn't know
black
either.
People, I mean.
Yeah, I didn't get that either. So I think it's mild enough that it goes over children's heads, and that it's a fine movie. It's not Disney's best, but I still bawl, and I can't watch it anymore because I'm just completely broken up over that movie. So let's move on. Bambi, also kind of a downer. The one story I like to tell about Bambi is that Walt Disney actually seems to have based this movie off of real things that happened in his life. Apparently, he bought his parents a house with all the money he made, and that house burned down and subsequently killed his parents in that house. And he made Bambi based off of that, and that's where the fire scene comes from.
Well, he has never said that, but just as J.R.R. Tolkien obviously got ideas for his books in his own life, though he always denied it, we can tell what happened because we do know that Walt Disney always felt guilty for having that happen because he was the one who bought them the house. Bambi is kind of like a dear lifetime story because I don't see it as really. Maybe I have to go back and watch it because this one has been a little bit of a while. But if I've never seen it as so much of an arc, maybe just a subtle arc for his character. And not all characters need arcs, but
Did
it's
Bambi
mainly
come before or after Fantasia.
After.
Okay, because it does feel like an offshoot of Fantasia.
Because
largely music.
Yes, Bambi is kind of just showing a deer in different times of his life, different stages. We get him when he's young and happy with his mother, and we get like the song "April Showers" is kind of a musical interlude, and it has no relevance to the plot whatsoever. So you were right about that. And it's just different stages of his life, having his mother killed by hunters, and then going with his father, which we never see except in Bambi 2, and that should be wiped out of all existence. And
you'll notice that is not on the list of movies that I intend to watch.
That's the direct-to-video. It doesn't count. So,
the thing about Bambi is it's more of a. I don't necessarily want to say musical, but it's more of just a listen to music that's relaxing and peaceful and watch some nice animation. That's not like the best animation on the planet, but it is pretty decent. And so it's actually just a real nice, like, aside from the fire and the mother getting killed, it's just kind of a nice, relaxing movie to watch, generally, I would say.
Yeah, it's kind of less about how epic the story is. The story isn't epic, and just about a different series of events that play out, and it's entertaining. Some of them funny, some of them it's just kind of a life cycle told through the eyes of a deer, really.
Which, a deer's life is just so fascinating.
Yes, they dramatized it very well.
So I actually wasn't able to watch this movie during this marathon, but it is one of my favorite Disney movies of all time. The Three Caballeros has some fantastic. Basically, what it is a sequel to. They did what
they
was
did
that
a
called?
movie called Saludos Amigos,
That's
and
right.
what this and the three Caballeros, I can't pronounce it. What it was at the time to improve, and this is what I like to throw out whenever people say Walt Disney was a racist, is that he made these two movies in order to promote relations between Mexican lands and Southern American lands, so that people would want to come to.
Do you mean Hispanic?
Hispanic, thank you. I'm sorry, my brain froze.
All right, so
that happens.
But the thing I like about the movies is they're not like super like heavy-handed or preachy. They're just like, oh yeah, here's some different cultures that are different, and here's a lighthearted way of looking at them. Blah blah blah. And then I just love. This is the thing that I love about it. It's not about the exploration of the Hispanic cultures that really thrills me so much. Is the three characters they have. First of all, they bring in Donald Duck to start with, so that Americanizes part of it. So that gives you, he's kind of like the character that the audience lives through. And then the other two characters are the Hispanic characters, and their personalities, I greatly identify with both of their personalities, especially the red one.
Yeah, the rooster.
Because the rooster is the one who's always yelling and crowing, and that's kind of just me all over. So, I love those. I also the other thing I like about it is it is definitely a musical, and it doesn't really have a story necessarily. It's more so just to explore the different cultures, to have fun with some different kinds of animation. It kind of turns into a psychedelic animation going on at the end. It's weird.
Yeah, it's just supposed to be a fun movie. It's got different I think different cartoons from Disney in it that they made up specifically for it, and different legends from the different cultures that are Disney-fied, and different songs from famous singers who were Hispanic at the time. And it's just meant to be a fun movie, not a real story.
Yeah, it's not a story. There's some smaller stories that are really nice and cute in the movie, but
I think it's a great. I love the movie, but if you put that on the big screen today, something in that, people would be very confused because movies aren't made like that anymore. You always expect there to be a specific story.
I quite frankly think that people would be offended by the movie because they would say, "Well, this is South American stereotypes and Mexican stereotypes and all the rest of it," and I'd just be like, "Well, some of the cartoons might be, but I don't think that it's actually done in poor taste, because there's a movie called Neptune's Daughter, which has actual Mexican stereotypes and actual South American stereotypes in it that I think are quite they're far more offensive than anything you would see in these movies. I don't think the Three Caballeros or the prequel to that was done in any or with any bad intentions. I think that it was quite the opposite. But moving on, we've got two more. We got to hit through two more. Fun and Fancy Free. Would you like to speak to that movie?
Yes, I like the movie. It was a double feature that they were trying to do at the time. That Disney was exploring double feature movies. Another one people might not be aware of is The Adventures of Ichabod Crane and The Adventures of Mr. Toad. I think it
Don't get distracted.
Too. No, this is relevant to what I'm talking about.
Well, hurry up.
That was another double feature at the time, and this Fun and Fancy Free I've actually seen be split so that it's because the movie is two stories. It's Bongo and it's Mickey and the Beanstalk, and I've seen them split up in different tapes and DVDs back when they had tapes, as if they're just two separate features when it's just one movie. And it was just okay. Let's get the audience in there, and let's have Jiminy Cricket be the host, because cartoon characters like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and Jiminy Cricket were kind of like celebrities at the time, even though they weren't real people. So they would get him in, have him be the host, and have him tell these stories and get people in the theater based on that. And I like both stories. Bongo always frustrated me because none of the characters talked. It was always Jiminy doing their voices, and I don't understand why they made that decision.
That was very frustrating.
And especially because the next movie...
Was it Jiminy doing their voices, or was it somebody else doing the voices? Because I thought it was a woman.
There's two different versions. There's one version where Jiminy does it, and there's one where a woman comes in and does
the one
the
I've
voices.
always watched is the one where the woman does it, and it's just really weird to have a woman doing all the male voices, and there's only one woman in the story, and so it just is weird having the same voice for all of them.
I want to look that up afterwards and find out who was the original, because they couldn't restore everything once upon a time. But I just thought it was weird that they didn't just get voice actors for the characters, especially when the next one has voice actors. And it's probably the Mickey and the Beanstalk one is the more famous one, though. And it's actually really funny because it's told by, I can't remember his name, but this guy and some puppets, and I think he was the puppeteer, tell the story, and they have a very good sense of humor, and that always made me laugh when I was younger. So I like this movie. It's underrated and it's kind of overlooked, but...
Yeah, I think I have a tendency to overlook it just because it is the double feature, and I'm not a fan of double features because I think that it's kind of like, it just feels like laziness at the end of the day to me. It's like, oh, well, we didn't really have enough to put into any one of these two movies, any real significant quality, and so we're just going to, shove these two movies together and make them whole. But it's not bad. It's like they're both fun stories. They're just not very long.
Well, I should mention, I don't think it's laziness so much as the movie theaters used to be used for smaller productions. Like they used to show, that was the only place you could see serials. Like they used to have a Superman serial and you could only see it in the theater. And Fun and Fancy Free came when we were still just getting TVs where you would see, and channels and stuff like that. So you still had to put these features into the theater.
So... the final movie, we're moving on, and this is the movie that I just watched today in my marathon, is the original Cinderella from the 1950s. What is it, 55? I forget.
I can't remember.
I can't remember either, but no one cares. So the original animated Cinderella, I gotta say, Cinderella is probably, if you just look at her for what she is, on the first impression, my first impression of her is that she's kind of a pushover. Like, why wouldn't she just run away? Why wouldn't she just leave? Blah blah blah. Why does she put up with this? Why doesn't she just walk out? But having just watched the movie, she's also kind of a boss because she does push back somewhat with this wicked stepmother. She does. Like, when she's accused of putting a rat under the cup, she does try to explain that it wasn't her, instead of just rolling over and saying, well, yes, I should have known better. She does try to fight back with that. She does try to fight for her right to go to the ball somewhat. She does, push back in some ways. And obviously, in that time period, they were trying to have the setting be in... it may not have been the easiest thing for her to leave. It might have been the only option for her to stay, because otherwise she'd be homeless, and that's not necessarily...
Well, I should mention this. This is an ongoing discussion where people say that Cinderella is just a pushover, and she's just such a bad role model because of that. It's actually 100% realistic to how people who live in abusive families are in real life, especially since Cinderella, her father died and her mother took over when she was still a child, if you've seen the movie. And what happens in these situations is, say there's a child in an abusive situation, maybe not physically, but there's mental and emotional abuse, and they get pushed around and told that they need to do work, and then they need to pull their weight, and they get gradually told that they are nothing in subtle ways, and then when they do try to push back, then what an abusive person will do is they'll play mind games on it and be like, it's your fault, and not like that, not obvious like that, but they'll make it out to be the person's fault who is getting abused that's happening to them, or that they are being ungrateful, or they're reading into things that aren't there. And so growing up in that mindset, you actually start to submit to it, and you might not know anything better. And sometimes there's a lot of different outcomes for people who grow up like that. Some of them get out of it, and some of them actually become like the abusive person, and some of them just continue on with that mindset that's acceptable, and they have other people coming in and continually pushing them over and allowing them to have that stuff done to them. So, and also I should mention that back in the time period that Cinderella is set, the original one, you couldn't just go out and get a job back then. Back then, marriage was oftentimes people's only way to get out. So actually, Cinderella does whatever she can to get out. She's like, okay, there's going to be a ball, and you get an opportunity to get married and get out of this poverty and get away from these people, so I'm going to do everything I can to take it. And so
the reason why I was referring to Cinderella as a boss is because of the final scene where she does get out of the... First of all, they realize that they have another chance after the ball to try and become the wife of the prince because of the missing shoe. And Cinderella hears about that, and she just kind of drops all of the chores that she was given and walks off. And so there's that part that I was like, okay, that was kind of a boss move. And then at the very end, when she comes down the stairs, and she doesn't even like acknowledge that she was just trapped in a tower at the top of the building. She doesn't even like reference that. She doesn't even say, hey, they trapped me up at the top and this is kind of bad. Can somebody please help me? She just kind of plays right into the fact that, oh, I should have been here to try on this shoe. And she goes through the process as if she's one of the, ordinary people to have the shoe try on. And then when the wicked stepmother breaks the shoe, she's just like, oh, no problem. I've got the other shoe. She doesn't even have like an attitude about it. I would have been like, jerk. And then I would have clocked her with the shoe. But she's just like, oh, here it is. Don't worry about it. I got you covered.
Well, that's a theme in Cinderella, and I think it's underrated that she because I just said that, one of the main things they say about abusers is they probably are like that because it's always a taught behavior, and that's why a lot of people who grew up like that or had that happen at one point in their life become that way to other people, where they're always trying to push people down or manipulate them. But Cinderella is all about remaining kind and remaining having some grace even through that, and so you see that in the movie. And so I wish people would see that about Cinderella instead of just looking at a very shallow, she's not always standing up for herself or pushing it away, or she's not, pushing these horrible women down. And in some versions of the story, in the fairy tale, she actually is merciful to her stepmother and her stepsisters and actually gets them money and gets them out of their situation. I think that might be a little rose-colored that they all become friends at the end, but that is an unrealistic thing, but so is fairy godmothers and glass slippers.
What? Fairy godmothers?
Well, I have one, and I was certified as a fairy godmother once upon a time.
Oh, well, all right. So that's where we're going to leave off with this Disney's discussion that I'm sure we'll pick up. I have to watch more movies in order to pick it up, but we've got different things like Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, Lady and the Tramp, Old Yeller, and Sleeping Beauty coming up. So hopefully on an upcoming episode we'll pick up the Disney discussion. But I just thought it would be really funny to start out a podcast talking about one of the most famous horror movies of all time. And then, all right, let's talk about Disney animated movies. Yay! So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm just in a really weird spot where I just need to talk about really random things and hodgepodge them into a podcast for you. So there you have it. Who should I shout out from Twitter? Harry1T6, Harry Kachatrian. Always give him a follow because he's like probably my only Canadian friend left on this planet that I still talk to. Anybody else? Make sure you watch last week's or listen to last week's episode because, man, let me tell you, we're trying to record an episode over the phone is not easy. It sounds like it's easy. You just download an app to do a phone recording, but it's not. Because, the app drops the call or whatever happens. It's just the worst. And then you have to edit it together. And anyway, it actually turned out not too bad. So please go and listen to last week's episode. It was really good. Thank you, everyone who has listened to now 10 episodes of You Got It. Hopefully next week we'll have a video one. If not, I apologize for getting your hopes up. And go watch Psycho and scare your pants off by that end scene with the big smile. I'm Warrior Woman 91, and this is You Got It.